गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबको ये कासा डायलॉग्स में हार्दिक स्वागत है। जय हिंद एंड प्रणाम। इसके साथ हम शुरू करते हैं और मेरे साथ हैं जनरल गौतम मूर्ति जो ये पूरा शो का इंट्रोड्यूस करेंगे। सो ओवर टू यू।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Jai Hind. On behalf of Team CASA, I welcome you to this all-important webinar on geopolitics. ये अपना 46th webinar है और ये सब्जेक्ट काफ़ी इम्पोर्टेंट है कि चाइना और रशिया एंड द वेस्ट, ये दो कैंप जो निकल रहे हैं, where does India stand? See, geopolitics and its twin international relations have undergone a sea change in the past 2 decades. The world looks on cautiously and with trepidation as China challenges US hegemony and finds in Russia a willing and able partner. India has had a long and durable partnership with Russia and that has stood the test of time. Even while it builds a strong strategic partnership with the US, it refuses to condemn Russia for the invasion of Ukraine that the US wants it to. How long can India hold out? How does India see its close friend Russia cozying up to China? To answer these questions and other allied issues, we have with us a very eminent panel. First speaker of the evening is Brigadier Dr. Arun Sehgal. Brigadier Sehgal is Senior Fellow for Strategic and Regional Security with the Delhi Policy Group. And he's with think tanks that focuses on national security, diplomacy, and track to dialogues. Earlier, he founded the Director of the Office of Net Assessment and Indian Integrated Defense Staff, Head for Center of Strategic Studies and Simulation at USI, and Senior Fellow of IDSA. Brigadier Sehgal has written many articles, carried out net assessments for a number of organizations, and is very active. Is one of the foremost strategic thinkers of the country. We welcome you, sir, to this discussion.
Thank you, sir. Too many good words, not worth it.
Sir, of course, you've been my boss and I know it's very much worth it, sir. Our next speaker is Brigadier 𝗤𝗚𝘅 𝗖𝗂𝘁, Sena Medal retired. He served as the Deputy Director General of IDSA from 2011 to 2016, Indian Army veteran, extensive command staff experience spanning over 3 decades. He's been a DA in Turkey, and he has been focusing on strategic affairs, counterinsurgency operations. And those who know him know Brigadier 𝗖𝗁 is one of the most articulate, intelligent veterans that we have, strategic thinkers. He is widely traveled and has excelled and topped every course that he has done in his life. Our third speaker is former Ambassador Mr. Gurjeet Singh of the Indian Foreign Service. He's a postgraduate in International Studies from the School of International Studies, JNU. 1980 batch officer with the IFS. During his tenure, he's been posted to many missions. He's been Ambassador of India to Germany, Indonesia, ASEAN, Timor-Leste, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. He has also been India's rep to the African Union, UNECA, and IGAD. He's also a Deputy Permanent Representative of India to the UNEP and UN Habitat. Currently, he's Honorary Professor of International Relations Studies at IIT Indore. As you all know, he's a prolific author, writer, commentator, and considered one of India's finest minds in international relations. Although all of you know General Shankar, his audience knows him very well, but let me further say that he's one of the most prolific geostrategic thinkers today, and also a professor in the aerospace department of IIT Madras. He's involved in applied research and as well as strategic issues. और जो ये गना शॉट blog जो आप लोग members हैं, जो देख रहे हैं, it's across 80 countries. He has more than 14,300 subscribers, which he doesn't mention, gets an average of 2,000 hits per day, and his readership is well over 5 million. And this StreamYard is his account. Thank you, General Shankar, for allowing CASA to use your account, and it is over to you to conduct the rest of the proceedings. Over to you, please.
Thanks a lot, sir. And at the outset, I do welcome all members, panelists who are on this show. We're going to have this nice dialogue on where the world is going and where India is going, where China is going, Russia is going, and where US is going. Right. We'll wait for Brigadier Rumel Dahiya to join. I think he's having some problems in joining in. When he joins in, we'll get his viewpoint, but then we'll start the whole show. But when we start the whole show, the whole story is about balance of power. In the last century, the balance of power was between USA, China, and USSR, then USSR. Then came the Cold War, right? USSR got replaced by Russia, and Russia virtually fell out of the equation. China was still a poor nation at that point of time. Though it was a powerful nation, it was a powerfully poor nation. And we went into a unipolar world. And then from a unipolar world, at the turn of the century, we started seeing the dawn of something between a multipolar and a bipolar world. Right. But everything was going hunky-dory. Till such time, the way I look at it, till such time a Chinese, guy put out this particular cartoon. And this came from the South China Morning Post. And it set us rethinking about where the world order is. And this is very clear. As per him, the four heavyweights of the world are India, Russia, China, and USA. Many people in the West don't consider it so, but this is where it is. And from this, I derived, welcome, Brigadier Dahiya is just recounting about the whole affair. There he is. So from that particular thing, I derived this quadrilateral. And what does this quadrilateral say? Four ends of the quadrilateral, USA, China, India, and Russia. I've used this quadrilateral extensively for the past 6 months. Many of you are familiar with it. And it very clearly tells that USA and India are along one diagonal attracted to each other. And similarly, Russia and China are attracted to each other. Before I proceed further, if any one of you has put on his, iPhone on or your mobile on, please put it off because there's a resounding coming through that. Right. Okay. Unless the resounding goes.
He's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
No, it's not okay. Romel, you've got two devices on. One has to be switched off, please.
Should I switch on the?
You switch off one device.
I've switched off that.
Okay, now it's fine. Look.
Okay.
Yeah,
now it's
clear.
fine. Yeah,
Yes,
now it's
please.
clear. Fine.
Yeah.
So we are looking at this quadrilateral where India and USA in the recent times, a lot of bonhomie, and simultaneously the Russia-China equation has also been strengthening. All was fine, but we've had some problems with USA, the Pannu-Niger case, Bangladesh, and certain differences of opinion are now appearing, especially in the Western press, and it's being echoed in our own media, right? And now people are talking of India being an illiberal democracy, and to the extent they're saying this is not the India we knew. But then China and USSR are also defying history. They were never great friends, but today you see a different kind of a bonhomie. With this kind of a thing, and with the multiple conflicts which have erupted all over, whether it's in the Ukraine or in the West Asia, right, and the increasing tensions in South China Sea and the East China Sea, you find that USA is virtually fighting almost a lone hand battle against both these, something which many people said should be avoided. It is in this context that we are going to discuss this whole thing of China versus China plus Russia vis-a-vis USA, the overall global tension which is going on. And in this, where does India stand? It's a major question which we have to ask for ourselves, because we are also in the equation of this balance of power. We are considered a balancing power in many constructs, global constructs. Plus, we are the fastest growing economy today in the world. It puts us in a spot, right? And we'll discuss all this. So what we'll do is, I'll invite each speaker to spend 5 minutes on this topic and this conundrum which we are facing. And then we'll get into subsets of this problem and discuss it subsequently. The first person I'd request to speak is Brigadier 𝗖𝙗𝘁𝗍𝗫. Sir, all yours. Please take it on.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be on.
Sir, sorry, there is still some disturbance coming about. Someone has a second device on. Just check, please.
Hello, I'm okay.
Okay, I would request everyone else except Brigadier 𝗖𝗍𝗫 to mute yourself.
To mute, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for this honor. And to start my presentation, can I just have the slides, please? So I have got a couple of slides to indicate to you how the global geopolitical system is evolving as we are nearing the end of 2023 and entering 2024, a period of great consequence that we are going to enter. So let me have the first slide, please. Okay, I don't know what happened, but okay, this is the evolving geopolitical system. As far as the United States is concerned, along with its partners, Europe, it looks at the world from a unipolarity point of view. It's still living in the past. It believes that it is a massive economic, political, and a military power, which has got a global heft, and therefore for the security and the peace and the rule-based order in the global system, it has to remain the primary unipolar player in the global system. The challenging this notion of American unipolarity is the China's rise. China is an ambitious power. It believes that its manifest destiny lies to be a global player. It considers itself at this point in time a key challenger to the United States, but does not believe that it can overtake the United States. So the United States and China are two competitive powers and are trying to fight. They're trying to be a global contestants, primarily because the Chinese believe that it is imperative that to change the global system to the destiny of community of common destiny, so that basically what they're trying to say is that the Westphalian order, which was created post Second World War, which has continued all along, has lived is time. Time has come to evolve a new system. World cannot live with the unilateralism, economic unilateralism, military unilateralism of the West, and therefore there needs to be a change. So this is a change that the Chinese are trying to fight against. It's important to understand is that China per se, given the geographical location, does not pose a direct challenge to the United States. But what it does is it is pushing for a geopolitical challenge. So this is an important aspect. As far as the Chinese are concerned, in their concept of thinking, is that the route to the global power lies through the Indo-Pacific. And to that extent, the first area of Chinese interest lies in undermining the United States' influence and power in East Asia, where they are a dominant player, and trying to carve out a very, very strong architecture, a security architecture based on its allies and partners. The third element of this equation is the tripolar world, Russia. Now, situation as far as Russia is concerned, and I'm talking about today, is that the Ukraine war is on a standstill. There is the Russians today are controlling about 25% of the Ukraine territory. Ukraine does not have to take it to recoup this. The counteroffensive has failed. European Union, NATO are bereft of adequate military capacity or capability to pump into Ukraine to bolster Ukrainian military or its defensive capacities. As United States enters into its last year of its political battle for the next presidency, it is losing interest in Ukraine. That is why you find Mr. Zelensky rushing off to America for some kind of assistance. But as you know, that the Republicans are absolutely deadly against it. And if Trump comes to power, this is going to be a difficult issue. So what is the situation? Situation is that the European alliance system of the United States is becoming weak, incapable of supporting its larger geostrategic interests. Russia is in a stalemate, but a positive stalemate, both in terms of military capacity and its economic capacity. Along with China, they are becoming a formidable opponent to the US-led unipolar system. Now, added to that are the middle powers, and that's where big countries like India comes in. Middle powers are shaping big power discourses, particularly in terms of regional influences. For India, if you take India for example, India is an important partner and a player in Indo-Pacific, and in fact in Asia. We have a strong economy, strong military power, strong capabilities, and as the time comes, we will become a strong influencer even in the maritime domain, particularly across the Malacca Strait into the South China Sea. So the point which important lies is this, and similarly, Indonesia is an important player, and if you go down, Vietnam is an important player. So these middle powers are shaping the big power discourse, and they cannot be overlooked, and their interests cannot be overlooked. There are more. If you go down the Middle East, there is Saudi Arabia. Even a small country like UAE is an important player because of its economic capabilities. So this is the system that is currently available. I mean, that's the interplay between these players is defines the current global political system. Next slide, please. So where are the alignments? As far as United States is concerned, it has got alliances in Europe, it has got allies in Asia, and it has got some key strategic partners. And one of them is also India. The United States, as I mentioned, is contesting and containing China. It is contesting and containing Russia. But in all these spheres, it is having difficulties. The Chinese are concerned is that China and Russia are strong partners. I will not say strong, they are partners. They're partners driven by their own needs and perceptions. Chinese look at Russia from two perspectives. Chinese look at Russia from perspective that if Russia remains a strong and a credible Eastern European power, it remains a challenger to the United States. And to that extent, the United States' power and influence is not simply pushed against China, it gets diffused between China and Russia. And that makes, and with United States having weak alliance systems in NATO, it becomes vulnerable, and its ability to impose will is that much contained. Next is Russia. Russia again will play a central role not only in vis-a-vis China but also in East Asia. With the kind of stalemate that is now happening, the the Russians are now going to emerge slowly and steadily a regional balancer for Eastern Europe. And you already see what the Hungaries and other countries are trying to do. So if Russia becomes a regional balancer, from the Russian perspective, it becomes a strong player in managing European security, not the Western European security, but certainly a player in the Eastern European security. And so this is how the alignment of global powers is going to take place. India as a strong power and a middle power has a role to play as a strategic partner of the United States, got a role to play as a close erstwhile partner, but yet a strategic partner of Russia. And India has a contextual relationship with China. If you notice an interesting factor, if you notice in the recent months, China has reached out to everybody. China has reached out to the United States. China has reached out to, on 25th November, China had a meeting in Busan, in Korea, where it went into a discussion with Korea and Japan to restart the security dialogue. But there is one country in the global system, which is a credible country, is an important country, which the Chinese have not reached out to, is Russia. Sorry, India. So all these developments then again have to be taken in account of what is happening on the three wars, uh, Ukraine, West Asia, as well as India. I mean, sorry, in Chinese assertions. So we leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. So from my perspective, this is the global power play that is taking place at this particular point in time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if they come up. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir, for the alignments which you have put out. Very clearly at the end, you said India is a strategic power which is of great importance to USA and Russia and also China. The only thing which you highlighted is while China is reaching out to USA and Russia, it's not yet reaching out to India. So we'll see how it goes and we'll talk about it. Now I'll invite Brigadier Dsrhumen Dahiya to have his say. Please, sir, 5 to 6 minutes, all yours.
Thank you very much. It was an interesting start to the discussion. I would like to reinforce the fact that international relations are always determined. The contours of the international relations are always determined by the interaction between the major powers. And if you see the period immediately after the Second World War, the two groups, that is Russia and America, two blocks, two alliance systems, they were competing with each other, and China was always there in the room. And how this configuration was working was one against the two, or two against one. At one time, Russia and China were together. Another time, when the Nixon moment came, America and China became together. When Medvedev was the president, then Obama tried a reset with America, and it was again America and Russia together, because China had not been very enthusiastic about the condominium. So the relationship, the alignments have changed from time to time. However, the general pattern had continued. Now it seems that the pattern has repeated itself now when China and Russia are together, seen to be together, and America is taking on both of them simultaneously. But the context has changed, and therefore we need to look at it from a different point of view. During the Cold War period, any alignment with either side was seen as an alliance. I mean, there were no room given to anybody who is not aligned with you. It is either with you or against you. That kind of a situation was there. Today, however, many countries, and particularly the middle powers, are not really looking at being tied down to one side or the other. They are taking their independent positions. Relationship has become a little more transactional, but there has also been more, besides their flexibility in how they relate to the major powers. The major powers are also accommodating of their aspirations, primarily because they don't want to lose them. Here, the overall difference in power has reduced. It's not so overwhelming that all other powers simply given to the whims of the leading powers. Now, as you know, that China and America are absolutely locked in a strategic competition. And it seems to be an irreversible sort of competition, because if you look at a historical perspective, whenever a change in the hierarchy of global order takes place, those periods are very painful for everybody. They don't happen suddenly, they take time, but then often they have, in the past at least, they have, of course, when the order changed, it was preceded by a major conflict between the outgoing power, which doesn't want to lose its hegemony, and the incoming power, which is in a hurry to replace the old power. The nuclear weapons have added a complexity here, since any nuclear war would obliterate both sides in a CNP or comprehensive national power kind of a setup. Nobody wants to go to that extent of fighting that war. So therefore, the wars are of different kind, not kinetic wars directly between them, wars between proxies, otherwise economic war, technological war, diplomatic war, political war, hybrid war, and all sorts of wars. Now, Russia, out of these three powers, Russia is a comparatively weaker power, primarily because of two reasons. One is economy. And second, of course, is the following demographics. And this demographics is something which can't be changed. This trend can't be changed very quickly. And I would say rather that it may not be changed at all. And that means that Russia's future in the long term doesn't seem to be very bright from that point of view. America accepts people from outside, so its demographics don't fall. China still has lots of headroom. But Russia is the one which is going to suffer on this count. Economy, in any case, Russia's position in the GDP sort of hierarchy is going down. It is already, I think, 9th now. In next 2-3 years' time, it's likely to be 11th. And as they say that by 2030, by 2050, Russia will have 1% of the world's population and 2% of its economy. And that economy is also not broad-based. It is quite heavily loaded in favor of energy, wherein 28% of the GDP currently comes from the energy itself. And with the trend that is emerging of renewable energy coming in more and more, Russia's overall share, therefore, in GDP, global GDP will fall, is likely to fall. Now, but still, Russia is not just about any other country. It still remains a major contender for power in the world, primarily because of its strategic weapon capability, and also because of its aggressive diplomacy, and also global presence, which comes from the Soviet time. Even today, some people say that whereas China is a competitor of America, but mainly in economy, and secondly, reaching somewhere there in technology. However, overall military reach, it is not there. Overall global acceptance, it is not there. Now, so far, this 2 versus 1 competition in some form or the other has been going on. But now, I think India is emerging as the fourth corner. So this triangular competition is becoming a quadrangular competition in a way. Except that India has so far not taken a corner, has not claimed a corner of a quadrangle, and it is somewhere in between, but with a difference. That whereas previously it was 2 versus 1, in the present case, India's position is unique that it has very good relations with America presently, and it maintains its cordial relations with Russia. So none of the other three powers can claim that kind of an equation. They can only have one good relation. America has good relation with India, but not with Russia and China. China has good relation with Russia, but not with America and India. And Russia cannot claim good relations with America in any case. And with India and China, yes, it has good relations, but still there are some ifs and buts in that. So that is one part. The second part is where we must see this, how Russians see themselves. You see, Russians always see themselves as a 1,000-year-old empire, starting with when these Vikings came and established a rule mixed up with
request
Slavs.
you to wind up this round. We can.
All right, I'll do that. I'll do that. Now, just going forward. Okay, coming back to the old this thing. Going forward, what is going to happen is this: that whereas Russia and China today are joined together primarily because of American response to both of them, because so far both of them have been fighting for America's affections when it suited them. But presently, their geopolitical interests bilaterally converge, and multilaterally they get together to oppose American positions. So that position is going to stay for some time. But I will conclude by saying that China and Russia need not necessarily be friends forever. They have inherent issues, inherent distrust, and therefore their relationship may not continue. And as far as Russia and India are concerned, this relationship is, as far as Russians are concerned, is still young. We just got to know each other only after Second World War. And this relationship, therefore, still has scope to grow further. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made two very important points. The first point is that the China-Russia equation is transitory, and the equation between these two and USA could also well be transitory. So that's the first issue. The second thing is the rise of the middle powers, or the heft of the middle powers, which are pushing the bigger powers to behave differently, which Brigadier Arun Sehgal also mentioned in his discourse. Right. So now thanks a lot for your intervention. I would now request Ambassador Gurjeet-Singh. Sir, over to you to give us an overview of what's happening. All yours.
Thank you, Brigadier Shankar, and it was a pleasure to have such distinguished people on the panel. And I heard both Brigadier Sehgal and Brigadier 𝗖𝗍 with rapt attention, and both have given some wonderful things. So let me just throw up some ideas. Rather than see the world as a quadrilateral, I see it more like an octagon. Second point, I think the era of multipolarity is coming. It is not gone. We see that people trying to jostle for bipolarity or a tripolarity, but multipolarity is there. And I think most of the relationships today are not strategic, they are tactical. So you are not having an ideological position among anybody, and the concept of strategic autonomy or an omnidirectional policy is actually dominating almost every country's discourse. You may say we are all weather friends, but when it gets cold, you do put on your jacket. So I think that is what is affecting everybody right now. The concept of cooperation, competition, and confrontation. This, I think, determines most relations. And for multipolarity to succeed, the cooperation part must be emphasized and the conflict part reduced. The moment you go more into conflict, like say Ukraine, the bipolarity and the smaller powers get squeezed to take a position. So when you look at this octagon, you have to see not only Russia and China, but I think you see Iran, as a new RIC, Russia, Iran, China. I think that alignment is extremely important. And with the Americans, you have to see that the G7 is almost fully behind them now strategically, because they do not have the wherewithal to stand up. And then it also follows with the EU. Now, this is what troubles us, that if Iran was not under US sanctions and would not have gone over to China, we could have had a better alignment with Iran. And had there been no Ukraine crisis, the G7 and the EU would not have become poodles strategically of the United States. So therefore, this multipolarity suffers when conflicts arise. Now, this year was actually a good year for us. We went to the far side of the moon. We had a growing economy. We had a successful G20, and we became the voice of the global south. But the limitations of these come out soon after. When the Gaza conflict starts, the global south is fractured. When the climate negotiations come up, the global south is again fractured. When the debt crisis is upon us and there are 1/4 of African countries going under, with Ethiopia being the latest to perhaps default this week, see that Gaza, climate change, debt, supply chains, and technology, these are now becoming the new fault lines. And this is where India needs to play a role. Why I'm saying this is not strategic? Because I don't think today we are so worried about a veto in the Security Council being an absolute necessity for us, that we must hang on to somebody. So today the UN itself is in disarray. Is that good for us? No. Is that bad for us? Perhaps. But we cannot do without a system, because we are not one of those powers which can do what they like and have to pay little price for it. When we say a rules-based international order, we expect ourselves to also follow those rules. Not like China or the US or Russia, who believe that these rules are for others. So I think the future lies in India, Germany, France, Japan, Australia to an extent, trying to find their own space within the current growing conflict, more conflict, less cooperation area, and we have to revert it. In this, we cannot forget ASEAN, Latin America, Africa. Those are India's old friends. And that is where we can punch our weight and bring whatever we are saying to the table and hope others would listen. I would stop there for now. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you brought the India dimension very clearly into the focus. At one level, yes, we were looking at a quadrilateral. At another level, you're very right. Heading into multipolarity. The future is multipolar with a whole lot of powers. I would say it would be probably more than an octagon, because when I tried to put on what will be the other four corners of this octagon besides the four which we have identified, I could think of EU, I could think of Iran, maybe the Gulf countries, and then I was struggling. Probably, right? So as also the global pass as a whole, right? And the second thing which I found very interesting in what you said is about the fractures of the world, which you identified as Gaza, technology, supply chain, and climate change, supply chain breakages. I'd like to add one to it. I'd like to add food security, because food security could be an offshoot of climate change, but it will slowly but steadily, impact on this globally. This is what my view is, and I think India has a huge role to play in all this. So to that extent, I think we've had an overview as to where India stands in the global system and as how the global system is evolving. Right. I'll get back to this quadrilateral for what it's worth, and we'll examine India's position from this quadrilateral. if you look at this quadrilateral carefully, without looking at the larger octagon or beyond the octagon, which the ambassador had mentioned, this quadrilateral has a few triangles. Now, these triangles are, if I may say, one is the Russia, India, China triangle, right? Where India's position has to be seen in the light of the improving Russia-China relationship, even if it's transactional. And this transaction could well last into the next decade, right? The second transaction which we have to see, the triangle which we have to see in this, is the US, China, and India relationship, which is the big relationship the way I look at it, right? Because the big competition is between India and China, and the big balancer in between is, of course, India. And then there's another triangle, and that's a critical triangle. And that's a triangle which not many of us understand fully. And that triangle is the Russia, Russia, USA, and India triangle, right? Where we have to balance out these two, guys who are on the opposite sides, when we have very good equations with them. And what's more, there is a view in the West itself that it is high time we became friends, or if not friends, at least sideline Russia, keep it neutral, wean it away from USA to China to the extent possible, so that we can focus on China. So this triangle is also pretty critical and interesting, and where India has a critical role to play. So we'll examine these three triangles. I'll start with the first triangle, which is Russia, USA, and India. And for this, I'd request Brigadier Arun Sehgal, sir, your views on this.
Thank you, General Shankar. It's a very interesting triangle. Let me start by saying that India stands at the conical top of this triangle. You put India on the top and relate India and United States and India and Russia, then the equations become very easy to understand. Essentially speaking, India and Russia had very good relations. Recently, even the foreign minister said that EM said that Russia has been very supportive to us in large number of contingencies, criticalities. Whenever we are in trouble, 71 every time. Russia has been a great supporter for us for in our armament supplies and as well as our strategic arena, particularly in the space arena. In current scenario, it is the greatest provider to us of petroleum and energy products, saving us close to about 30% of our our investments in this region. So Russia has been a very, very important and player for India. The question basically is this, is that India also at the same time have a very consequential relationship with the United States. Given the prevailing balance of power in the global system, from Indian perspective, Russia can be looked upon as a great supporter, an intrinsic supporter, but from the emerging geopolitics point of view, United States is our consequential partner, like I said, because it's important to understand this differential. From our perspective, as far as Russia is concerned, it will continue to supply us weapons, to continue to support us in various international fora. Also, Russia can play a balancing role vis-a-vis our relationship with China, which is vast. And also the fact is that Russia and India can play a role even in Middle East and in dealing with Iran and issues like that. So Russia is an important player, and also in Central Asia, Russia is an important partner for India, where there is a competition between Russia and China. So Russia has a multiple perspectives of India's support. As far as United States is concerned, why is India chosen to make United States the most consequential partner? There is one logic to it. The logic basically is this. Like I said, China is the main factor. We and United States both face the same challenge. We face the same challenge in the same region. As far as China is concerned, it is uncompromising on us. We need to understand this. They are uncompromising on us. They are uncompromising for us because primarily they believe in two things. One is India is becoming a close strategic partner of the United States. To that extent, it is becoming a source of a combined challenge. The number two is India's own growth and comprehensive national park. As India's comprehensive national park grows, as we become a strong military, economic, technological power, we will seek our space in Asia. Like I said, Asia is the fulcrum for Chinese global rise. As long as China does not control Asia or does not become an all-pervasive power in Asia, it cannot play a global role. That's the look at. Please understand one thing: China remains a continental power with a strong navy. Its eastern fulcrum is controlled by the first island chain, which cannot go out. And if you notice why Americans and others are going gung-ho about the Philippines, is primarily to close the one route which the Chinese could have utilized for entry into Western Pacific. So we, as far as India is concerned, India is the Western fulcrum. The India controls the Western fulcrum, United States alliance controls the Eastern fulcrum. China is a contained power in this region, and China has to fight it out. And that's why the competition will remain intrinsic in Indo-Pacific region, come what may in 2024, until in my view, till late into the middle of next decade. That's the important part. Where does Russia come in? Russia, unfortunately, has to stand on two stools, like I mentioned. It's a strong. It is because of the United States factor and the fact that the United States have never accepted Russia. I call Russia as the United States Pakistan. So as far as America is concerned, they will never accept Russia as a great power. So therefore, there is an common concerns between Russia and China, and they, like I mentioned, they cover each other in Europe as well as in Asia. To that extent, and you are aware of the fact, like I mentioned earlier also, that they have combining together their forces, even in the East China Sea. They have had 7 exercises this year, where combining both air power and maritime power. The most important element which is now emerging is the China's 3-ocean strategy. The Chinese 3-ocean strategy is, there's one ocean is the Pacific, second is the Indian Ocean, the third is the Arctic. The centrality of the Arctic is becoming very clear to the Chinese. Chinese are very precision people. They're already thinking in those terms. And that is where China and Russia becomes close partner. If they start controlling the Arctic route, that will have a further impact on the power equations. So from India perspective, between the two, if I were to weigh it down, as things stand today, I will put our relationship with the United States is about 60%, because the United States is also helping us develop advanced technologies. It's providing us advanced technological weapon systems. We are being integrated into the ISRs. These things are not simple. We don't understand. We have to comprehend this. What does the real-time intelligence and these kind of things mean? We talk about G414 engine. Do you know, in all these years of our relationship with Russia, there have never been a technology transfer. Even in BrahMos, the ramjet technology is still purchased from Russia. So I'm not cribbing about Russia. But the point you have to have is you have to get the realities right. They gave us a cryogenic engine. True. But we had to remanufacture the cryogenic engine because of the sanctions. So Russians help us. They have helped us in a nuclear submarine program, yes. But the reactors we had to buy. So the question basically is this, that it is 60% on the American side. It is becoming 40, I would put it 35, 65, 35. That's kind of relationship with Russia. And but important thing is this, that India will, despite whatever happens, and this is a clarity which has been given to the Americans understand it, India will remain a strong supporter and a partner with Russia. There will be a strategic construct. There would be common areas of our convergences, and they will be Central Asia, be it Iran, be it even going into East Asia as we further develop. So these are the issues that are important. So to sum up, in this triangle, from an Indian perspective, America is a heavier partner than Russia. Nevertheless, Russia is also a very important partner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you made two very important points at the cost of reinforcing it. I'd like to reinforce it. One, China is uncompromising on India, which has come out loud and clear across all three panelists who have spoken. And the second thing which you said, in this triangle of Russia, USA, and India will have to maintain good relations with Russia and USA. Maybe 60 to 65% with USA and 35 to 40% with Russia. We'll have to continue with it. We don't have a choice, irrespective of the equations between Russia and China. So that brings me to the next triangle, which is Russia, China, and India. And this is a very interesting triangle, considering that some time back, maybe about 5, 6, 7 years back, it was being spoken of that will there be a Russia, India, China trilateral? Well, that's gone, but the Russia-China equation is growing, and it has implications for India. So with this, I request Brigadier 𝗤𝗚𝘅, sir, please shed some light on this triangle. Over to you.
For us, this triangle is very consequential. Chinese often say that their growing relations with Russia are basically a result of America's policy towards both. I would go to say that our continued good relations with Russia, despite certain limitations, and our growing relationship with America can also be attributed to China's behavior towards us. And it'll be good to always remember this at the back and keep it at the back of our mind, that China can never be a friend of India. Two great powers emerging at the moment, not fully, mature, living cheek by jowl, having contested area of influence and interest, can never be great friends. There will always be contestation. And as is China's want, that if they have to deal with multiple adversaries, they would like to deal with the weaker adversary with a view to point out two things. One, to the weaker, they want to point out that the stronger one will not come to the aid of the weaker one and will not pull its chestnuts out of fire. And to the stronger one, to say that despite you, I can handle your allies the way I like. So that makes it very clear to us that China and India will always be, cooperation will be very limited to certain things in which both of us have our equity, but otherwise mainly it will be a contest and often confrontation. As regards Russia, Brigadier Sehgal very clearly brought out that it's not always hunky-dory. For example, the transfer of technology hasn't been there. And as we know, when Mr. Rajesh Mishra went to, as Prime Minister Envoy went to Russia to meet then Russian Prime Minister 𝗤𝗏 for his support on our position with regard to nuclear explosions in 1998, 𝗤𝗏 wasn't very kind to him. And primarily because that still stays with that generation of people, or those who were influenced by that generation, is that Russia at one time thought that India would do what Russia wants, and that they had a superior-inferior kind of or superior-subordinate kind of a relationship. It's very difficult for Russia to accept that the situation has changed. India is no more a subordinate. And going forward, India will probably be a superior power. And if nothing else, even when we know that there is no direct conflict of interest between us and Russia, that's a comforting feeling for both countries, in fact, and one of the reasons why our relationship continues to be good. But Russia has also been a little wary of our growing relationship with America. Again, it's a function of America-Russia relations rather than anything else. Part, of course, is that the dependency shifts. Even in the arms trade, we will be less dependent on Russia, and therefore Russia will have less leverage on us. But mainly it is because Russia-American relationship being strained. If any friend of America will not be seen kindly by Russia, despite the flexibility that has come about in the world relationship in the world, where relationships are transactional, relationships are more tactical than strategic. Despite that, having said that, you see, RIC, SCO, BRICS, although BRICS was mainly a formulation by China, to begin, SCO in any case was a Chinese initiative. That's why it is named as Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But Russia has always wanted India to be part of these formulations. And RIC was a separate institution because they had seen that in India and China are destined to become competitors going forward, and that their relations are going to be strained. Russia wanted to smoothen this relationship in a way that in the relationship with America, these two countries, which could be their allies or could not be their enemies, let us say, adversaries, at least these do not have a problem within themselves. Now, it's not very loudly spoken, but we understand that the effectiveness of BRICS and SCO is going to be very severely dented because of clash of interests of India and China. RIC, in any case, is not much functional. It's a talk shop people do for the sake of formality. And even BRICS and SCO do not have a great future. Now, like I said before, the war today is basically, competition today is technology. In technology, competition is in economy. Competition also is, like Ambassador brought out, is also for hearts and minds across Africa, South America, Middle East, and everywhere. And America now has realized in the last 2-3 years that they are losing this battle of hearts and minds. China, through their BRI and financial assistance without looking at ideology, type of government, democracy or not democracy, without any of these considerations, is scoring over America. And America needs India for 2 reasons. One is this region to help them in this battle of perceptions by joining hands with America and work in the countries where we still have equity. And number 2, of course, since its closest allies, the Europeans, the NATO countries, have been hollowed out in terms of military capability, particularly after this Ukraine fiasco. They would need strong military powers to check Chinese power. As a contest, let me tell you that, for example, UK, which is the closest partner of US and even in NATO, has just about 100 to 150 tanks that they can field, or 1 to 2 regiments of artillery, heavy weapons that they can field.
Yeah, I agree.
So therefore, in this triangular competition between China, Russia, and India, Russians' apprehensions about growing Chinese power, where the Chinese might push them out, and the vacant spaces in Siberia, which the Chinese may like to use Lebensraum to fill those spaces, also make Russia less relevant in Central Asian republics and in the Middle East, particularly after the agreement, or rather say normalization that they tried to get between between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So Russia is feeling threatened from this side. The counter of that was that he visited Saudi Arabia and UAE, and immediately thereafter, Iranian President Raisi went to Moscow to meet him, and then the Omani foreign minister went there to meet his counterpart Lavrov. Now, so therefore, Russia is not fully comfortable with China. My recent visit to Russia and talking to various people suggested that they are very apprehensive about what the growing power differential, particularly the economic one, might entail ultimately. And Russia, therefore, is also not looking kindly at Chinese efforts to improve its relationship with EU. Russia is trying to come in that also. So going forward, I think whereas Russia cannot take sides between China and India at this particular moment, but the fact that even after the Galwan clash, Russia did not stop supply of munitions and weapon systems that were due to us, also goes to suggest that Russia is not privileging relationship with China or our relationship, despite the fact that their economic dependence, their dependence for supply of goods, which China can supply and which we cannot because they don't need, I think that is greater on China. But at the same time, Russia would like to try and keep balance to the extent that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. I think the major point which you made is that as Russia's influence and power, in fact, as Russia's economy goes down and its power goes down, its leverage and influence also would slowly start sliding down, right? And that's going to have a large implication for this, triangle between Russia, India, and China. And Russia is destined to be the junior partner in this triangle between Russia and China. And sooner or later, as India's power grows, so the Russian issues also will come up. So we'll leave it at this. The last and the most consequential triangle, as far as India is concerned, is the India, China, and US triangle. And this is what I'd request the ambassador to kindly weigh in. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, I think we've heard very good perspectives. And this triangle, actually, there is very little that China would like to leave India to maneuver. China would like to put India in a straitjacket. China is not comfortable with India's rise. And that is the main contrast with the United States. The United States is comfortable with India's rise, particularly if it helps to decouple us from Russia and challenge China. So it is not a benign interest in India. It is a strategic interest in India. The tactics of that leave much to be desired, as we have seen in recent times. Now, earlier we have discussed how unless China has control of Asia or Indo-Pacific, they are not going to be a great power. I think Brigadier Sehgal said that. So I do not see the Indo-Pacific or Asia becoming what Latin America is to the United States or what Eastern Europe was between the end of World War II and the end of the Cold War to Russia. I do not see that happening. There are too many contenders, too many paths. I think China has reached the maximal position of dominating the South China Sea, keeping India, Japan, Australia on tenterhooks, and making ASEAN its economic partner or vassal to the extent that they want. Now the only thing is Taiwan. I think when their time comes to celebrate a big victory, they would like to include Taiwan. Can Taiwan be included as effortlessly as Hong Kong or not? So, I mean, that is where the Americans seem to draw a line. But the point is that for much of the time that the Chinese were taking over the South China Sea, the Americans were missing in action. So the most important lesson in this triangle for India is that the Chinese are not our friends. The American friendship is interest-based, tactical and limited, and at critical times could be missing in action. So therefore, it is not the panacea for any of our ills. Having said that, while China challenges us economically, technologically, and in every other way, the Americans are willing to play ball up to a point. You have to keep negotiating. But I think they are more comfortable in setting up supply chains which include India. So India is part of their plans. The civilian nuclear agreement was one such major idea. IPEF is another idea. But whereas on the civilian nuclear agreement, China was the spoiler. I think on IPEF, I'm not quite sure. Are we ourselves the spoiler? I mean, we don't want to associate with the trade pillar. And okay, now you can say the American, they're offering you nothing. So this is where the problem is. Chinese want to dominate the economic pillar. The Americans want you to work in their pillar the way they want it, and are apprehensive of engaging trade-wise with big players. So there is a kind of a square off which is not strategic, it's not even tactical. It is one of those hide and seek kind of places where I don't know how we are going to go. So I come back to my idea that, with the US, the competition and cooperation, the cooperation is maximizing, not so much the competition or the confrontation. With China, the confrontation and competition is maximizing, and the cooperation levels have gone down. This is because of the geopolitical problem. Can we now deal with other countries on China's periphery and increase our cooperation with them to increase the competition with China? We are doing it with Philippines. We need to do it more with other ASEAN countries. We need to do it with Japan, with Australia. And in this, we need not necessarily depend on the United States. That is what I would like to say here. The United States is not a permanent, pole on which India can lean on.
Offshore balancer.
It is the tactical pole for now. I would like to stop there.
Thank you, sir. That was pretty clear. The major takeaway I get from what you have spoken is that India's rise is creating ripples, whereas USA and probably a large part of the rest of the world is comfortable with India's rise. You find China is not. And along with it, of course, our good old friend Pakistan also would be quite uncomfortable with this whole story. And the second point which you have made is that India needs to make its rise on its own, in its own steam. And that, I think, is a very important point. Irrespective of other things, as you grow up in the power matrix, we should be able to be standing on our own. And because history has proven partnerships and alliances are only transitory to the extent that you're of your interests. The day your interests change, all these also will have to change. And that is something which we have to relearn, because after all, we have also changed our compass from Russia to USA over the past 20, 30 years. and tomorrow we might have to yet do a turnaround of this compass as our equations grow. I did see Brigadier Arun Sehgal wanting to put in a point. So you have a viewpoint, please do weigh in,
Yeah,
because after that I'll wrap it.
very quickly. I just want to highlight one thing is that the United States, for all its power and influence in Indo-Pacific, is economically a weak player. It has got no leverage with ASEAN, is getting limited, although, mind you, the foreign direct investment is close to about $75 billion vis-a-vis this thing. But the entire ASEAN is getting enmeshed in the BRI. IPF is a non-starter, as we saw what Ambassador Gurjeet Singh has written very aptly in his piece also, the fact that we could not get the trade deal, and neither are Americans are losing interest. There is no TPP, and no CPTP is also not functional. So, the question basically is this, is that the entire American focus on Indo-Pacific is on militarism. That's something which we need to understand. And number two, small point, we have to remember, sirs, that America is an offshore power, is an offshore balancer. It is not a regional power. It is not a regional stakeholder. Whereas China is a regional power. India is a strong regional power. So the contestation between India and China will remain intrinsic, because we are both regional power and we are vying for the same strategic space. United States is not a regional power. And number three is, out of all the allies and partners the United States have, the only player which has got the comprehensive national power to play a big role, economic, political, technological, supply chain, everything, and emerging as a strong player is India. And therefore, it is imperative. There's no favor in trying to do business with us in multiple domains. I said everything else. It is in their own interest. Particularly as the own American economy right now is doing well, but it's suffering. So the discourse we have to take into account is that while we have relationships with everybody, we need to recalibrate our own interests. And like he rightly said, we have to look at ASEAN more critically. We have to develop more trade with them. We have limited trade with them. We have to upgrade that trade, and also wean them away from this whole narrative of BRI. But the unfortunate part is, even the Japanese don't have much investments in infrastructure investments in ASEAN. So it's a big thing. The political leaders want investments in their countries. Like, for example, Indonesia. Who is giving money to Indonesia? The Chinese are giving money. Americans talk about money, but they give pittance. We do not have that capacity right now. Maybe 10 years down the line, we will have, and then you will see us play a role.
We'll see, sir. We'll see how it. Thanks a lot, sir. We'll see how it goes. Right, we've had some fantastic ideas coming out, which I will wrap it up in the end. I'll take a few questions from the audience, and then we'll see just a few which are important. First and foremost, we have a new member in 𝗤𝗏𝗏. Thanks a lot, Aman. Thanks a lot, 𝗤𝙁𝙤𝙁. And thanks a lot, Dinesh, for joining in. Right. Now, Shrithik Kotari has a question. He says, Russia won't be liking us buying increasing weapons, ammunition from West because it eats into their sales, reduces forex, etc. What do you see them doing to counter this now and in the future? Since Brigadier Dahiya, you've been to Russia recently, so I would request you to take this question on.
They do not like it. That's why they have been trying to convey our budding relationship not only with America, but also with Israel and France. They have been, therefore, been trying to bid for every import of major weapon systems, be it helicopters, be it submarines, be it anything else. But at the same time, they seem to have realized two things. One, Particularly in last 2 years, their ability to meet even existing orders has gone down tremendously because of their own needs. And therefore, they realize that if we need something urgently, we will take from them. Secondly, they are trying to pitch for Make in India sort of formulation, and they say that we are ready to transfer technology and joint production. And they cite this case of AK-74 rifle being produced at 𝗣𝗽𝗍𝗍 as one of the things. 𝗣𝗂𝘁, etc., they want to give, but we must understand also that there are geopolitical factors at work. We cannot be buying things from America, from Russia, when there are threats of sanctions. We do certain things, we buy oil, we continue buying S-400 and all that, but then we do not want to cross a tipping point beyond something. So Russia would be unhappy, Russia would want us to be dependent on them, but at the same time, one is that they are being flexible, and second, they are offering whatever they can. So it's up to us finally to take what we want.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. The second question is an interesting question. Sir, if we can buy cheap oil from Russia, which is thousands of kilometers away from us, why can't we buy oil from Iran? A cheaper and faster transportation? Because this question has many layers. So I'd request Ambassador Gurji to, take a shot at it, because it actually, you did mention about Iran some time back, and the fact remains that India and Iran have always had very good relations in the past, and we are now straitjacketed due to our equation with USA. So your view on this, sir?
Well, actually, it's a very practical thing because there are sanctions on Iranian oil purchases. Nobody can. Only the Chinese bust the sanction. Nobody else can. Whereas on Russian oil, there is no sanction. There's a price cap. So there is a difference. If there was a, sanction on Russian oil, then we would also not be able to buy. So it's essentially that issue. This is the problem. The Americans have disrupted through their sanctions on Iran our relationship with Iran because we do not have the wherewithal to counter it. That is the problem. Thank you.
Right, sir.
May I add to
Yeah,
it?
please.
Two small little things. One is that there are reports, unconfirmed, non-Indian reports, to say that some of the Iranian oil, which is in the market and which is in the know of the Americans, that Iran is selling that oil, but letting it happen because of need to control the energy prices in Europe and elsewhere, so that overall availability increases. So there is some Iranian oil which also comes to India via UAE and other places, but not directly.
Yeah, fine. I see that point completely. Shritik says, am I right to think emotionally and feel slightly insulted that Biden has turned down Republic Day invitation? It's an honor to be invited, and I don't understand how you turn down your important partner. Brigadier Sehgal, sir, are you listening on? And if you can take this on.
I think he must have temporarily switched off.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
He's back.
Has it been confirmed that he's not coming?
Yes, sir. I think so. I saw a report to this extent.
Okay.
Brigadier Sehgal, sir. No, there's something wrong with this. Sir, can you see that question on your screen?
I emotionally slightly insulted that Biden has turned down Republic Day invitation. It's an honor to be invited, and I don't understand from you who turned down important partner. Am I correct?
Yes,
That's
sir.
the question. Okay. So there are two issues to it. Firstly, Republic Day was an add-on to the 27th Quad meeting. So Quad meeting itself had multiple issues involved. The Japanese Prime Minister is stuck in a parliamentary this thing. In Japan, when the parliament is on, the Prime Minister has to seek the leave to leave the country from the parliament. Number two, there is also the State of the Union address. True. Third issue is, I think perhaps he is under pressure. He is under pressure from the lobbies within, and it is a political calculation on his part that he might have turned down the invitation. So it will have consequences, no doubt. It will have repercussions, no doubt. But in a partnership like us that we are trying to build up, these kind of issues will happen, and we'll have to cope with them and take them forward and take them in our stride.
Thank you, sir. The last question I'll take for today is, as long as Russia continues to align itself with Bharat, it would remain a formidable force in the present and the future. Your views? Look, in the intonation in this question is that, look, as India rises, Russia and regresses, which is going to happen going down the slide down because its economy is going to go down. Will there be a change in the power equation? Will there be a change in the overall power quadrilateral, which I did show? Though at this point of time, everyone agrees that India will be a smaller player in this quadrilateral, this could flip. Your views, Ambassador sir?
Thank you. I don't think I agree with the tenor of this question, or the previous question for that matter. International relations are not governed by emotion. And just to clarify on the previous question, Australia has its National Day on 26th of January. That is also a constraint. It's not only one, and I don't think the United States, frankly, it is domestic issues in the United States, not entirely impinging on India, which is keeping him away. So I don't think it is a slight. Now, coming to Russia, I don't think it's a zero-sum game that India goes up, Russia comes down. I don't think so. And I don't think any diminishing of Russia contributes to India. We would like Russia to be an important player in the multipolar world. It's only when they stand on their own that they will be able to make a distinction between themselves and China. At the moment, India's role in BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization is being circumscribed because the crutch of Russia is no more available to us. So therefore, we should look to them standing on their own 2 feet and not necessarily their diminution, which has no benefit to us. Thank you.
Right.
I totally agree with this point. Totally agree with this point that it's not a zero-sum game. And in any case, we are not in competition with Russia for influence. We are not growing at the cost of Russia in any case. And secondly, Russia being an important player actually strengthens our position and our case for a multipolar world. Otherwise, it would become a bipolar world. If there are more contesters for polls and strong ones like Russia with history to back them, I think our case for a multipolar world increases. Russia itself sees itself as a Eurasian power today. Otherwise, at heart, it is a European power. 3/4 of the Russian population belongs to Europe, whereas 2/3 of the area belongs to Asia. So it sees itself as primarily as a European power. Therefore, its heart still lies there, and we are not competing with them to reduce their power and grow at their cost. We want to be with them. We want them to be a strong pole so that we become a strong strong pole ourselves. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think we've had a fascinating discussion. A discussion of this nature, we could continue days on end, but we'll end it up at this. The important issues which have come out in this is, we have left behind unipolarity, we have left behind bipolarity, we have now got into multipolarity, and multipolarity is here to stay. Much against what many of us have said, that look, China is a rising power, it has got tentacles all around, all that. That too is transitory, because the worst demographics of this entire lot is of China. And if you forecast the demographics of China, and that is something which I have done, you'll see this demographic change happening in China, and that's going to affect its internal dimensions, and thereafter, as a consequence, its external influence quite a bit. And this is going to get pronounced not very far ahead, just about 5 to 6 years ahead. This is something which everyone is not really commenting on or factoring in. But having said that, multipolarity is here to stay. The second thing is the interesting thing which we got out of this whole story is the rise of the middle powers, or the relative rise of the middle powers vis-a-vis the global powers, and that, right, each of the middle powers today have a constituency of their own in the global south, and that constituency of theirs is pushing them to negotiate with the global powers so that there is some sense of equity in the global order. And in this context, I think India has a huge role to play, not only in South Asia definitely. With the way we are championing the African cause, I think we have a huge role to play in rise of, getting African nations on our side. I wouldn't say on our side, to help them. And then, of course, we need to increase our equity with the ASEAN and the nations of the Pacific, which we are doing. We already have a good equation with South Korea. We have a good equation with Japan. We have a good equation with the Philippines and Vietnam. It needs us to increase our equations further with Indonesia, Malaysia, and the others in that area, including the Pacific Island nations. So that's something which we need to focus on. We have to stay the course with our competition with China, which is going to be unrelenting. In fact, if there's anything, it's not only going to be unrelenting, it's going to be uncompromising, right? You look at it from a different point of view, which came to my mind in today's discourse. What today China is to USA, we are to China at this point of time. And as we grow and the Chinese are stagnating and I don't see them coming out of it in a great hurry, right? This problem of unrelenting and uncompromising relations between China and India will continue. Okay. Then, of course, the issue of the Indo-Pacific and the centrality of Indo-Pacific, though the problems today, the live problems are in Ukraine and Gaza, right? These disruptors will eventually lead us, will continue, but the main focus and tensions and everything, the main game is being played out in the Indo-Pacific. And that, to me, is the critical way things will pan out, because, like it was brought out, till such time China is the undisputed power in Asia, it doesn't have a role as an undisputed global role in the larger scheme of things. So Indo-Pacific is the football field of tomorrow. Okay. Now, having said all this, this is common geopolitics, general geopolitics, but we have to look beyond this. And the factors which are going to drive us beyond this are climate change, energy, right? You're looking at food security, technology, and supply chains. Now, and if I may add, health, because I think the combination of lack of energy, food insecurity, and climate change will bring about its own health factors, which is going to be a vector of global power in days to come, like it was proven during the COVID season. So this is something where we have to navigate, and India has to be mindful of all this and not just keep looking at these big powers. India has a role to play beyond just the military and economy and the diplomatic aspects. There are other aspects also which are coming in, which India has to ready itself for. So with this, I'd request General Gautam Murthy, sir, I would request you to sum this up for a few minutes and then close it.
Thank you very much. I think we've had a most fascinating discussion. And as we can see, India's position is getting, as India rises in the world order, and I am quoting our EAM here in his wonderful book, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World. He says, as India rises in the world order, it should not only visualize its interests with great clarity, but also communicate them effectively. And I think this is what India is doing. And as all the panelists and you yourself have brought out, it will be contested. There's one point which the ambassador has always been saying, and he's been saying this for over a long time. There are two poles that India should be looking at: look east towards ASEAN, look west towards Africa. They are your friends, they are your reliable friends. And as Brigadier Sehgal in his slide, wonderful slide, which encompassed the whole thing, pointed out about the rise of middle powers, India is in a unique position to offer this leadership and offer a sort of a secure leadership for them, because we have nothing to gain other than deepening our interests. And India has been seen as that. It is a legacy of the past that we need to strengthen and take forward. Thank you all, gentlemen, very much for this wonderful, wonderful discourse. And I'm sure, General Shankar, you will get a lot of views for this, because I think this has encapsulated India's trajectory in the modern day. Thank you all very much, sirs. Jai Hind. God bless.
Thank you.
Good evening and Jai Hind to everyone, sir.
Thank you.